Well, hello there, everybody. You just stumbled across a little channel here called KPattsTheater. As you could probably guess, my name is KPats, and well, this is my theater. Just in case you're a dumb bitch. Now, I know there are plenty of other YouTubers out there who, review movies and react to them, but now I'm gonna do it too. Yeah. But before we get to that, I'm gonna drop on you some exposition, to set the mood. Now, throughout my entire life, I've never been really big on reading. However, when I was a young tot, there was one book series that I really liked. That being Curious George. Hence the title of the video. Now, I could sit here and lie to you and tell you that I enjoyed these stories for their harsh, gripping narratives and dynamic characters. But really, it was all chalked up to the fact that I enjoyed looking at the illustrations. All those text-only books could piss off as far as I was concerned. The hell is this shit? You telling me you only have pictures on the first page of each chapter? I don't think so. I'll stick to these masterpieces of literature, thank you very much. So you can probably imagine my excitement when I was watching TV one day and I saw a commercial for this upcoming film called Curious George. Oh, wow, he's got his own movie? Oh my God, take my money. Take my parents' money, because I'm 7, I don't have an income yet. So I practically dragged my dad to the theater so that we could see it, and once I watched it, I thought, best movie. A+, grade A, A1. Well, that was when I was about 7 years old, and if you could believe it, current day me does not really trust my taste in films from back then. After all, we're talking about a kid here who used to eat Kraft singles all by themselves. That's it, just the cheese. I'm not even joking, I actually ate that. What was wrong with me? So I guess you could say that I'm a little bit curious to see how well this movie holds up. I mean, I'm sure it's a pretty good film. I mean, it's got Will Ferrell and Drew Barrymore in it, for God's sake. That means it's gotta be good, right? Well, actually, I have no idea. The only way to know for sure is to actually watch it. So, anyway, without further ado, let's stop monkeying around and watch Curious George, the movie. So if any of you out there were worried that we'd have to wait a while to get to see George in this film, then you can put those concerns to rest, okay? Because he's right there in the first 10 seconds of the film, and oh God, he's just as adorable as I remember.
I wouldn't give to fly down to the Congo jungle, snatch him from his friends and family, surely doing unsurmountable psychological damage in the process just so he can be mine.
Hey, don't look at me. It's nothing this man wouldn't do here. What happened? Did he urinate in the water? During the title screen? That's just rude. So if you couldn't already tell, the animation in this film is pretty freaking good. I mean, it's got smooth movements, vibrant colors, and it meshes 2D and 3D animation surprisingly well. Well, for the most part. Sometimes it looks a little bit wonky, but on the whole, pretty good. And if you're going to talk about this film, you gotta talk about the soundtrack, which is also phenomenal.
Turn the whole thing upside down. I'll find the things they say just can't be found.
All the songs in this film were done by an artist named Jack Johnson, who, to be fair, I'm not really familiar with any of his other work, but he does a pretty good job in this film. But as everyone and their mother knows, the keystone that holds a film together is its story, which is a quote that I just made up. So let's get to that. So as you can see, George is being very curious. I mean, I would hope so. It's in his fucking name. And in the process of being curious, he's pestering all the other animals of the jungle. Dear God, just vanquish me, please! But then the parents of those animals come and they're basically like, hey, what do you think you're doing hanging out with our kind? You know that goes against the ways of the jungle society, bitch! So with no one to play with, George goes to bed sad and all alone. Yeah, but to hell with that, we then cut to a museum in Big City, USA, where a man is giving a tour to a bunch of school children. But this ain't just any man we're talking about here. We're of course talking about the man with the yellow... Well, I would call him the man with the yellow hat, but as you can see, he is not wearing one at the moment. So in the meantime, I'll just call him Will Ferrell because, honestly, that's all I can hear when he speaks anyway. Ow! Ooh. And this character here, voiced by Drew Barrymore, is Margaret Dunlap, or Maggie for short. And there's really nothing else you need to know about her other than the fact that she is the teacher of these students and that she also has the hots for Will Ferrell. Don't we all? In fact, I'm pretty sure the only reason she brings her class to this museum at all is just so she can see Will.
Dunlap, why do we have to come to this boring museum every single week?
It's not boring. It's very interesting.
Eventually, we do get this man's real name.
Ted?
Mr. Bloomsbury.
Walk with me, Ted.
But I've already been calling him Will up to this point, so I'm just gonna keep calling him that because I don't like change. Anyway, this man that we were just introduced to is Mr. Bloomsbury. He's the owner of the museum, and he's worried that he'll have to shut it down due to low attendance.
I have to sell the museum. We're broke.
And this is his son, Junior. Real clever name there, by the way. And his plan is to tear down the museum and replace it with a parking garage because it would make more money. Real original motive, too.
Ka-ching.
Oh, yeah, gotta have parking.
The world doesn't need another parking lot. The world needs a place where kids' brains can grow.
And a place for horny school teachers to go for field trips under the guise of education. I think it's pretty obvious right from the get-go that he is going to be our movie's main villain. But I mean, I can't really blame him for turning out the way he is. I mean, his dad doesn't really seem to care much for him at all.
I was all set to go to Africa when something happened. Yes, then I began another adventure, raising Junior.
If only Janet followed through with that abortion. But Will comes up with an idea that might just save the museum. The idea being to make a new exhibit that would bring in more visitors. And at the center of said exhibit would be...
What about the lost shrine of Zagawa?
Which is a...
Ancient idol, 20 tons of granite, carved by 1,000 craftsmen over 100 years.
Initially, Mr. Bloomsbury wants to search for it himself, but then he comes to the sobering realization that he is...
Really old.
But that's okay, because Will decides to volunteer in his place. He's never been on an expedition like this before, but pfft, what's the worst that can happen? It's a G-rated flick. Will and Mr. Bloomsbury head out to prepare for the expedition, leaving Junior behind in the office to cope with the crushing emptiness of being a neglected son. Ooh, that's gotta hurt. But Junior decides he's going to take matters into his own hands.
Sorry, Ted.
So word of advice to any parents out there. Please give your children lots of love and affection. Otherwise, they might burn a page in your treasure map that would prevent you from finding an artifact that could save your museum. One thing I do like about this film is we get to see how Will became the man with the yellow hat we all know and love today. Because as it turns out, he wears yellow because these two owners of this safari store downtown convinced him that it was an offer he couldn't refuse.
But what kind of meatball would buy these?
Excuse me. I'm here to be professionally outfitted. Thank you! Thank you very much!
Now you can't get that from the books. So when Will arrives in Africa, he meets some locals who offer him help in finding the shrine, and they make their way into the... Oh my God! There he is! Oh, it's so good to see him. I don't know how he could get any cuter.
Huh? Oh, a monkey. Peekaboo.
Oh God, stop! Oh, too much cuteness overload. It's too much. Stop!
Okay. Aha!
Oh, thank goodness.
Oh yeah.
So after that adorableness, they continue on their trek for the shrine when Will thinks he's found it. But it turns out it's smaller than he was anticipating.
What am I gonna tell Mr. Bloomsbury? Bloomsbury? Wow, strong signal.
Or a plot contrivance. Will sends a picture of the shrine to Mr. Bloomsbury so he can see the bad news for himself, but he looks at the picture and thinks,
It's even bigger than I ever imagined.
And to further complicate the situation, by this point, Will had already hung up the phone, so he has no idea of the misunderstanding. Which means, uh-oh, looks like we're in for some conflict! Not sure of what else to do, Will decides to pack up and head back to America. A defeated man. And unbeknownst to Will, George is following him from shortly behind. I guess because George apparently doesn't have any parents. Ugh. He decided that having Will Ferrell as a father would be the next best option. I mean, can you blame the guy? I want Will Ferrell to be my daddy too. But if that motherfucker touches my Legos, then someone's leaving my house in a body bag. And this is where the movie differs from the books. Not that I was really following any of them to begin with, but this is where it effectively retcons what was established in them. Because in the books you see, the man with the yellow hat was a poacher who caught George and brought him home as a pet against his free will.
But I mean, it's okay. He ended up liking it at the end anyway, so I guess that's all that matters, right?
And I guess the change makes sense. I mean, the writers didn't want to hit the kids with a harsh slap of reality right then and there. And I know not very many of you care about it anyway, because this is Curious George and not Lord of the Rings, so let's just get back to the story. George manages to get on the ship that Will boarded, but for the time being is stuck in the cargo hold. But don't worry, he ain't gonna starve anytime soon. Cargo hold's got him covered. Funding for Curious George was brought to you by the Dole Food Company, exploiting and subjugating the tropics since 1851. So when the ship arrives in the city, George continues to follow Will as he was doing before. But this time it's in a concrete jungle. And it is here that we see that some things have changed in the city. What I'm referring to, of course, is the sudden abundance of advertisements for the Lost Shrine of Zagawa. Wait, what? Listen, dude, I know your business is struggling right now, and you want more than anything to keep it afloat, and you see this as your gateway to that. I understand, I really do. But couldn't you at least wait until you've seen the thing in person? I mean, my God, you never even discussed how you're gonna get the damn thing back to the museum. Did it ever cross your mind that perhaps maybe transporting something this big will be a little bit difficult? Well, I can't say I'm too surprised. You gave it about as much thought as you did to your son, which is none. Anyway, we continue to see George following Will, with Will setting a very good example for the kids, by the way.
Hey! What, you couldn't see me?
Until he finally reaches his apartment. As soon as he gets back, Mr. Bloomsbury calls him to tell him to come down to the museum for an interview.
Get down here. All the news reporters are here.
Why would you do that? Forget it. But it looks like that task will have to be put on hold.
No. This can't be the same hat. Oh, it's the same hat! And the same monkey!
This poses a problem for Will because his apartment complex has a strict no pet policy, and his landlord, named Ivan, is apparently half man, half bloodhound.
I'm smelling pet.
I can smell capitalist swine from a mile away. There's no need to fear though, as Will has a decoy.
Bingo! Now move, please.
New game, hide and seek. Stay right there.
What are you doing in there?
Hold still, you little bastard!
Oh, God damn it. Fortunately for Will, Ivan was unable to find George, but a new problem arises when he finds out that George escaped through the ventilation system to the residence of
Miss Plushbottom. Oh, no, that's trouble.
Plushbottom. What? Well, I'm gonna take her word for it. I don't need to be convinced. Sure enough, when Will enters the apartment through the skylight like a normal person, he finds that George has painted on all the walls. Man, he did a pretty bang-up job, though, if I might add. And he's got a pretty good idea of where he is. Okay, little side note. I think any of you who have mixed paint before know that it wouldn't quite look like that. It would look less like a pride bath and more like Miss Plushbottom just soiled herself in the tub. Ah, what the fuck was I thinking? Miss Plushbottom eventually awakes from her comatose state and shockingly does not take too kindly to a grown man and a monkey watching her bathe.
I knew it! You are red-handed with pet.
As you could probably figure, he gets evicted. But Will ain't got time to worry about the ramifications of that. He's got an interview to get to, remember? So Will and George sneak into the museum. Yeah, I'm sure no one saw you there. Where Will stresses over his current predicament.
This is beyond bad.
And guess who just so happens to be in the next room over?
Look who's back. And he's wearing a yellow suit. What, is he officially the Golden Child now?
Golden Child, huh? You know, I'm not too familiar with that reference, gotta be honest. Well, I don't want to be left out on a joke here. I'm gonna search it up so that I can be part of the in crowd. Oh, now I get it. He is clearly referring to this golden child here from the 1986 film of the same name starring Eddie Murphy. Just look at these two back to back. The resemblance is uncanny. Realizing that there's no way out of this situation, Will pulls Mr. Bloomsbury aside to tell him the truth.
That can't be the idol.
I'm sorry, sir, but it is. I've been trying to tell you.
And is then promptly swarmed by the press so that we can see him bullshit his way through the interview.
So Ted, where is the idol now?
Yes. Where is the idol?
It's close. It's very close.
What else we got? Come on, guys, fire away.
But George, being curious as usual, fucks the whole thing up when he climbs up this big-ass T-Rex fossil and brings it all crashing down.
Oh, Ted, we're doomed.
It is at this point that Will finally decides to do something that he probably should have done when he first saw George in the apartment.
Hello, Animal Control. How can I help you?
Yes. Could you send someone over to the Bloomsbury Museum right away?
Sir, we just closed, but I can leave a message.
Hold on, they're closed? Doesn't something like that have to be open 24/7 in case, I don't know, goddamn zoo animal breaks out at 2 in the morning? But I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I'm sure the city government has already worked out some sort of agreement with the local zoo animals, and they can only break out during the day now or something. Okay. So because Animal Control can't be damned to do their fucking job, it looks like Will is still stuck with the monkey equivalent of Dennis the Menace for the time being. But right now, that's not very important because finding shelter is Will's top priority. So tell me, if you were homeless in the big city, where would you go for shelter? Maybe find an awning, a highway overpass, or how about a park bench where you are completely exposed to the elements? And you don't even have to sleep under it. It's fine. I see no problem with this. However, the rain stops as soon as it started so that Will and George can have a moment together gazing at the stars in a city that apparently produces no light pollution. What is this, Pyongyang? No, and they also eat fireflies. That's cute. And then they fall asleep. However, when Will wakes up the next morning, he finds that George is not by his side and is instead ran off to the local zoo. And it just so happens that Maggie and her class are there so that we can get more character development between her and Will.
How long have you had a monkey?
I don't.
Mr. Ted, what's your monkey's name? Yeah, what's his name?
He doesn't have a name.
He has to have a name.
No, he doesn't.
Huh. You know, I just realized that Will has never officially given George, I mean the monkey, a proper name yet. Oh boy, I wonder what he's gonna name him. The suspense is killing me.
George!
Yep. I know. I called it. I'm a genius. I don't know what it is. Must be some sort of sixth sense I have. So while the kids are being distracted by this monkey named George, Will and Maggie use this time to partake in more awkward small talk.
I know how much you love the museum.
I do love the museum, Ted, but that's not really why I go there every week.
Yeah, I know. Everyone likes the cafeteria food.
I've never had the cafeteria food.
Really?
Really?
Hey, guys, I really hate to kill the moment here, but isn't there more pressing concerns right now? I mean, call me crazy, but I don't think it's a particularly good idea to leave a group of grade schoolers unattended with a wild monkey. A very cute and very sweet wild monkey, I might add, but still, wild monkey nonetheless. It's all fun and games until some jackass kid pokes him in the wrong place and gets brutally mauled. So please, lady, you can always try the cafeteria sausage at a later time, but right now, you've got a job to do. And as for you, sir, it's probably best practice that you keep an eye on George in the future so that something like this doesn't happen again.
Floating away.
He's what? Hey, monkey!
You gotta save George.
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Okay. I missed the part that said that Will was responsible for getting George back on the ground. Wouldn't a better course of action be to call the authorities, call Mr. Fredrickson? I don't know, fucking anybody? Then again, the authorities in the city seem to do diddly dicks, so I guess you gotta take matters into your own hands.
Monkey! Watch out! George, whoa! Gotcha. Wow.
Do it. Just do it. Oh, free at last. What really happens is they fly around the city admiring the view from their balloons. Quite an unrealistic reaction if you ask me. I would be scared fucking shitless. But as they fly over the museum, Will is reminded of the hardships it is going through, which makes him think of a person who might be able to save it. That person being Clovis. He's an inventor, scientist dude, so clearly he can just make a science device to make some sciencey shit happen and make the shrine bigger. At least, that's Will's thought process. But George beats Clovis to the punch because while he's being curious as per usual, he discovers that by putting a snow globe on top of an object that's on top of a projector, he can make that object appear larger than it actually is.
I think he may have the answer to your problem.
So congratulations, Clovis, you turned out to be entirely pointless. But they're not gonna do that, are they? That's a little bit sleazy, don't you think? They'd basically be lying to the visitors of the museum. I mean, surely Mr. Bloomsbury would never agree to this.
Yes, I suppose this might work.
You son of a bitch! What the hell is wrong with you? Do you have no moral compass at all?
Are we so desperate that we'll lie to our public?
Yes, he is absolutely 100% correct. Yeah, I know what you're gonna say. He's got an ulterior motive, I understand that, but I gotta give credit where credit's due. That man knows bullshit when he sees it.
Nonsense. We promised the people something awe-inspiring, and we're giving it to them.
Wow, you are an absolutely garbage human being. I don't know how you're gonna top that.
Ted, you're like the son I never had.
Father, I'm your son, remember?
Yes, but I had you.
Go to hell. But Junior sabotages their plan when he gives George a latte to drink, which gets on the projector, ruining it and any chances of keeping the museum in business.
We've just been fooling ourselves.
Agreed. But sir, I still think we could...
Ted, it's over.
So with the museum now being a lost cause, Will wants nothing to do with George.
No! Don't follow me! Get away!
And right on cue, Animal Control comes to snatch him up.
Got him!
You were a little bit late there, guys.
Back to Africa with you.
Okay, I know they're going to reunite at the end of the film, but just seeing that look on George's face makes me die a little inside. Will tries to move on with his life, but wherever he goes, he can't help but be reminded of all the great times he had with George. Now, you know a man is truly broken when he mistakes a guy in a monkey costume for an actual monkey.
Ted, is everything okay?
Yeah, sure. Why?
Why?
Well, you are hugging a man dressed in a monkey costume.
Hey, lady, what we have here is special. I'm sure you couldn't possibly understand. Will then gets Maggie up to speed with what just happened.
George is gone, and it's all my fault.
Yes, it is.
What?
Oh, Jesus! This woman is as blunt as a hammer.
You're right. It is my fault. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a date with a monkey.
Yeah, at least he understands the emotional pain I'm going through. Has anyone told you how criminally beautiful you are? So because this situation is clearly all Will's fault, he decides to go to the ship and take George back. However, I'm not exactly sure how he intends to do this. The ship's already left. Perhaps it just wasn't meant to be. Unless you drive your car off the pier Grand Theft Auto style on the off chance that it will land on the ship, then maybe, just maybe, you might have a chance.
Kids, don't try this at home.
Now you hear that, kids? Don't try this at home. But that balloon shit from earlier, totally fine. Go fucking nuts. However, luckily for Will, the SSHA Ray, for whatever reason, never seems to lift its anchor up until after it's left the port. I'm not a ship expert by any means, but I would think you would want to do that before you started moving. Fuck it, it's not important. He breaks into the ship and releases an untamed African monkey from its cage. Such heroic qualities this man has.
I'm so sorry. I don't know how I let them take you away.
Sure, you may have cost me my job and my apartment, but you're just so goddamn adorable. But what's this? A hidden message from the mini shrine. Could it be? Could it possibly lead them to the real one?
It's the map! We had it all along!
Yes, it does in fact. So they go back to Africa, find the real shrine, bring it back to the museum, and the museum is saved. I'm not even gonna question how they did that. It probably just used voodoo magic or some shit. Which makes me wonder, were the locals okay with this? I'm talking about the ones in Africa. Were they okay with a crackerjack here just barging in and taking a relic of cultural significance to them? Well, without even batting an eye? It sure seems like it. I mean, hell, why stop there? Sky's the fucking limit. Go snag the pyramids from the Egyptians. I mean, they ain't using them. They just leave them in the Sahara Desert collecting sand all day. Just put that shit in the Smithsonian. I doubt they'll care. And in addition to the museum being saved, Miss Plushbottom and Ivan have now grown a soft spot for George, and Ivan tells Will that he can move back into his apartment. And also Junior and Mr. Bloomsbury make up. Yeah, a little too late for that jackass. And it looks like Will and Maggie are gonna get together too. I mean, just look, you can see it in their eyes. So, all in all, happy ending for everybody. Hooray. So that concludes my review of the Curious George film adaptation. And all I have to say is, it's a perfectly fine film. It's not going to be winning awards anytime soon, but I don't know what else to say. Just fine. That's it. You'll enjoy it while you watch it, but you probably won't watch it again. But if you've got a babysitting gig and you need the kids to shut the hell up for about 90 minutes, then you can plop this movie in the DVD player and let it do the rest. And I think I'm gonna leave off on that note. So babysitters, take notice. This is your film. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night.